It's the nightly news. It's also me trying to hide from 2 children. Do y'all watch the nightly news? I don't always, but when I have like a second, I do. And so tonight I was watching, and half the news you're kind of interested in. Like, I have this real need to know the news. When I was growing up, my dad would watch, dun, 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 whatever that was. And it kind of grows on you. And you're like, well, I need to watch. So, and then I think, well, what am I missing? Because a friend of mine is like, you might be on Facebook a lot, but you don't really pay much attention to what is happening to other people. That's sort of true. And so I was like, well, I got to make sure I'm getting clued in to what's happening around here. But so I watched the news and I just thought, you know what? I'm going to save them a little bit of time. I'm going to give you like a 15-minute rendition of the news, both read and watched. So we have lots of stories. We have Tom Brady and Gisele Bunchkin. I've never known how to say her name. They're getting divorced. So are like 8 zillion people in the world. Like, please, let's not read about that. Okay, there's that story. We have Chloe Campbell in Boulder, Colorado, is 14. She did not go home after a football game, and she's missing, or she's run away, but they don't know where she is. And that was reported by People magazine. And if I had a 14-year-old that was missing, I would want the whole world to know too. But there was this part of me that thought, a blonde, white, 14-year-old is missing, and now she's on People magazine. And when my sweet Hanya Aguilar, who was 13, and they knew she was kidnapped by a stranger, she wasn't on People magazine. So then that kind of makes me a little bit sad. The other thing that makes me sad is that, yes, we're going to get to Ukraine. The Bernard family in Tennessee lost their 2 children, Hollis, 5-month-old son, and Lily, their 2-year-old daughter, to their 2 pit bulls, Cheech and Mia, who they had had for 8 years. 8 years. The dogs had never shown any sign of aggression. The mother was hurt pretty terribly, and that was awful. So I'm not going to have some long discussion about how pit bulls tend to have a tendency to hurt people, because then the commenters come out and they're like, my pit bull is the most wonderful creature on the planet, and you're more likely to get struck by lightning than get bit by a pit bull. And I don't think it's helpful to anybody to point out anything they should have done when they have just lost their 2 children. And we're going to get to a local story about that in a minute. I would encourage anyone with a dog to not leave dogs away with small children. That would be what I would recommend to anybody, myself included. We have a service dog, and still am not. She's a golden retriever. But I didn't know this. Golden retrievers are obviously, in labs, are much less likely to bite or hurt or kill someone. But their teeth are so different, because their teeth are made to retrieve like ducks. So they actually have these soft teeth that don't do as much damage if they were to do something, because of their genetic makeup. I thought that was kind of interesting. So there you go. Harvey Weinstein, or is it Weinstein? Weinstein is going to court because the governor of California, whose name is Newsom, his wife is accusing Weinstein of doing something to her bad, which I'm sure he did. And what I find most not interesting about Weinstein, so I'm just going to say the things that no one says on the news, but we all want to talk about. I can't listen to this again, Teresa. What can't you listen to? We've never talked to Weinstein. Why is he using a walker? Does that seem odd? Weinstein using a walker. This person does not need a walker. I would just like to say, you're not allowed to use a walker just because you have gotten in trouble. Right? Anyway. Well, this is really going to turn some people around. There's a migrant crisis. Not my words. There's all this discussion of the borders need to be closed, and you had DeSantis sent migrants up to Martha's Vineyard. This is kind of old news. This happened a while ago. And the people in Martha's Vineyard have said, when it happened, they issued this report and said, we have a humanitarian crisis. And they were like, you have like 74 migrants here, and you're like sending out memos. So that is a good point. Well, now what's happening is the governor from Texas, who's a real winner, he is sending migrants from Texas to New York. And he's saying to the New York mayor, who's now building a tent city, well, you're complaining about a few thousand migrants, but like, come to Texas and see what's happening here. And I can see, honestly, both sides.
Hi, Mommy.
Hi. I can see that I would be annoyed at somebody telling me what to do when I didn't actually really know what was happening.
The forest is not snowing.
The forest is not snowing.
It's just a tropical forest.
Tropical forest, no snow. But I will tell you the problem that I have. And the problem is the family that was there today from Venezuela. Venezuela is not like, if you're making your way from Venezuela to the United States, things are bad for you. I have a good friend from Venezuela, and it's very dangerous. And this father was there with his... The licking, the drinking, and the licking. You don't get this on national news. This is a commercial break. He had 2 teenage sons, and they're standing there on the street in New York City. And I was thinking, I have a 13-year-old daughter. I have 2 teenage sons. And listening to them talk about what it was like to come from Venezuela, where they're really seeking a life, and that they should. I mean, none of us would want to be in Venezuela. And then to be used as a pawn and thrown into a bus and sent to New York, I mean, it's just kind of shitty to me. But anyway, carry on. Well, this is very interesting to me. So we've kind of had this crime epidemic. Today I was driving my boys to the airport, and we see the jail, and I said to them, it's so interesting that somebody does something wrong, we put them in jail, and then we pay for them to sit there forever. It just seems like if somebody has money, they should have to pay for themselves to sit in jail, right? To me. But my son Thomas said, well, what do you think? Do you want to just shoot people? I was like, no, I don't want to shoot people. But I do think we're spending a lot of money to keep people in jail, way more than we're spending on public education. And I would rather spend money on public education. So, but then on the other hand, I like people in jail, right? So you have the mother from Memphis who was jogging and raped and murdered, which is not ideal. So you have these criminals who lately I feel like we're seeing, okay, now what has the criminal done? Then we have the family of 4 that was murdered in California last week by people that had been let out of prison. We're just doing a little news update, Rachel. So on Wednesday night, right here at 8 o'clock, I am going to have a special guest on. And I have special guests on right often. But on Wednesday night, I'm going to have Tiffany Edens on. Tiffany Edens was 13 years old when she was raped by a stranger in December of 1986. In 1987, Richard Troy Gilmore, was convicted of the crime of rape and was sentenced to 60 years in prison. The parole board cut his sentence nearly in half, and in December, he will be released after serving 36 years. He was called the jogger rapist, not because he was raping joggers, but because he would pretend to be a jogger and jog by people's houses while he was looking for young girls and mothers, women, victims. He admitted to 9 rapes. 9. He was convicted of 1. The reason he was not charged with the others is because the statute of limitations ran out. He was called a dangerous offender at trial. He is now considered a level 1 sex offender, and that is based on their assessment of if he is more likely to do it again, I guess. Dylan Arthur, who is the head of the Oregon Bureau of Parole, said, I have sympathy for people in the community in Oregon, but he's going to be put into subsidized housing, and under the terms of his release, he will not be required, or the county or state will not be required to alert his neighbors that he's living near them. So he has to register as a sex offender, but no one will be told. So you have a man moving into low-income housing that's admitted to raping 9 young girls and women, and he's going to move in beside poor people who will likely not know he's there, all because Dylan Arthur feels like he's safe. I would like Dylan Arthur to welcome Richard Troy Gilmore into his house for a couple weeks. So on Wednesday night at 8 o'clock, Tiffany Edens will be joining me. She's really about exactly my age, I guess. She was 13 in 86. I was born in 75. Okay, so she's 2 years older than I am. She's almost 50. And I'm really excited that she is coming on because I want to hear her perspective. I think she knows. I think people's perspective really matters when they're in the middle of it, which is a lot of these kind of cases and news stories. A lot of times we hear this news story, but we want to hear from somebody that's been there. So anyway, I'm super excited about that. Wednesday night at 8. What else do we have? I don't know if I really feel like talking about her. Marjorie Taylor Greene. I mean, if she doesn't stink, I know y'all love the politics. Marjorie Taylor Greene, though, said this in 2020. Now, she's the least favorite of all Republicans, out of 7, of which Tucker Carlson's number 1, number 2 is DeSantis, number 6, Marco Rubio, and she's number 7. So people don't even like her in her own party. She said, this is for the election, there's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to take this global cabal of Satan-worshipping pedophiles out. She evidently is a real thing of that group of people that think there's like pedophiles in the White House. Anyway, she also said Biden's 5 million illegal aliens are on the verge of replacing you, your jobs, and your kids in school. They're also replacing your culture. And I have a problem with that too. Because what is your culture? How can someone replace your culture? We're in a country where people all move from different places. Like, what makes someone's culture? Why be so political? Oh, I don't know, because I'm a glutton for punishment. Because I don't like sentences like that. I find that annoying. And it's not because I'm a Democrat or a Republican. QAnon. Thank you. So I'll tell you about some Democrats that have also really pissed me off today. And Shantae Garrett. Does anybody know who Shantae Garrett is? Shantae Garrett leads a school in Rocky Mount, my hometown, Rocky Mount Prep, called Rocky Mount Prep. Rocky Mount Prep is a charter school. Now, Rocky Mount Prep charter schools tend to annoy me. I know they're great charter schools. I have friends who love them. It's kind of like pit bulls to me. They're not all bad, but sometimes where there's smoke, there's fire. If your child is at a charter school and you're pissed at what's happening, you can't call DPI. You can't call Superintendent Catherine Truitt. You can't call the governor. The governor ain't going to take your call anyway. The only time the governor's office ever called me was when I did that real funny joke during COVID where I said the governor made an announcement that all the children in North Carolina were going to have to repeat their grades. Yes, I did. I couldn't help it. And he called me then, but he'd never call me the other time. So anyway, Rocky Mount Prep on Friday had some students who protested because they are tired of bus drivers and cafeteria workers and janitors and bus drivers being in charge of their classrooms. Well, Shantae Garrett said that's not true. It's only bus drivers that they've had to use to help people. Oh, I can't read all these. Today, the children who protested were suspended. I would just like to point out something to you. If your children go to public school and they protest, I promise you in North Carolina, their suspension will not hold up in court. Nor will it hold up in court in charter school. But you don't have a school board because when you go to charter school, you have a board of hand-picked officials. Where here, where I live, in Edenton, these people are voted upon. Last week, Nancy Heiniger came up to my steps. She said, I'm running for school board. I'm Nancy Heiniger. I said, I think we know each other. We had just been together the day before at a track meet. And we're going to, she said on Friday night, so not this Friday, but on the 14th right here, October 14th, if you live in my town, there is going to be a forum where all the school board candidates are going to come and they're going to be asked questions. And I would encourage anyone from my town or wherever you live, before you go and vote, and you get your little ballot out, and you start saying, who is Wanda Picosin? Wanda Picosin. I saw that sign. Don't do that. Find out who you're voting for. Please, please, dear baby Jesus, find out who you're voting for. The last two bits more news. A study came out today about colonoscopies might not be necessary, but they said you should still get one. They just didn't find that they helped that many people. I thought you had kids later in life. What do you think? I'm like 90? Stop being political. Marsha, you're a subscriber, which I really appreciate. I'm not being political. The only time people don't like me being political is when they don't agree with what I'm saying. People love for me to be political when they agree with me. It's like my throat gives out after 14 minutes of talking. Y'all are in luck. Oh, and the last piece of news is if you want to go on a cruise, the Educated Debutante is going on a cruise January 23rd through the 27th, Miami to the Bahamas. And I would love to have some people go. It's been open to my subscribers. I have about 7 slots left. So anyway, I'm going to put the little comment in here, and you can message me if you want to go. Yes, I agree, Catherine. That was just big news today. I gotta go put my 8-year-old to bed. Carry on, nightly news. Dun, 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 dun.